I want to speak today about the vicious cycle of depression and prescription drug addiction that I went through when I was younger. And I'm just going to basically be sharing my testimony on that part of my life today. But before I go any further, I have to say as a disclaimer, because this is public, that I'm not a doctor and I'm not here to give medical advice or anything like that. I'm merely sharing my own story. So please don't go and take it as medical advice. If you have issues in this area, please do what you need to do. If you need to seek doctor's advice, do that. I'm just here to share my story, and that's the reason that I'm doing it. And I think I pretty much suffered from depression my whole life, which is ridiculous. Grew up in a home which, where there was a lot of problems, which I spoke about in my previous video. If you haven't seen that one, I will put a link in the description so you can find that one as well. But, I just had a very feel sorry for myself attitude towards life and didn't feel motivated to be better or do better, and didn't really understand that I even felt depressed or that I was depressed. But it was something that was a problem in our family, generation after generation, as was the problem with prescription pill addiction that I saw in my grandmother and one of my aunts and my own mother, who got better in the last years of her life, but pretty much had a problem most of the time. And these things do sort of seem to seep over to the next generation. I think what the thing is important for me, for people to understand, is this. When I was going through this at its worst, I was born again. When I was going through this at its height, before God helped me, I was in the ministry. And so many of us don't want to talk about it. We don't want to say that we've got these problems. We don't want to admit that we've got these problems, and no one wants to speak about it. You get told that you need to snap out of it, just do this, and just whatever. People that haven't been there will never understand it. And I'd sometimes go as far as to say, if you haven't been there, don't judge people who have or people that are, because you'll never know what it's like. It can be incredibly debilitating. There's those times where you get up in the morning where you don't get up, and you feel like you just want to curl in a ball, put the covers over your face, and not see anybody. And it's not necessarily precipitated by bad things. You can wake up and feel like that, and nothing bad could have happened, and something bad can happen and make it worse. But it's not because of having bad things happen. If you suffer from depression, it's not necessarily dictated by your circumstances, although your circumstances can aggravate it. And so I had a problem for many years in my life. And as somebody in ministry, you're just like, I can't talk to anyone, but who can you trust? They'll judge you. They won't think you're any good at your job. They'll think, the famous one is, you don't have enough faith. If you had enough faith, you wouldn't be feeling like that. And it's just not true. I think for me, the thing that I had to realize was, you can be born again and still have these problems. And at the end of the day, it's not God's fault. I realized in retrospect that I was the problem. And, there were reasons for the depression and reasons for all those things, which I'm actually going to share about, not in this video, but in a different one. And, for me, it was all rooted very much in the self-hatred that I had. I really hated myself. And it was like this feelings of self-loathing on the inside of me. And I am going to be sharing specifically on that in a future video. So if you want to see that, please subscribe, and you can hit that notification bell. That means when those videos come up, you'll know about them. But when it came to the depression, I never really spoke to anyone about it. And, shortly after my daughter was born, one of the most wonderful things that ever happened in my life, I used to suffer from terrible migraines. I'm telling you all this for a reason, because these things sometimes happen unexpectedly. I was always very careful with medication, because I saw my mother, my aunt, and other people become addicted to, whether it was antidepressants or tranquilizers or whatever. I don't even know what half of them were taking. I remember my gran used to sit on the bed with my one aunt, and it would be like, well, I'll give you a yellow one, you give me a purple one. It was like swapping sweets. It was like candy to them. And I can laugh about it now, but the problem was very real. So I was very, very aware of that. And I'm not the kind of person who just gets addicted to stuff. I don't have an addictive personality. And I always told myself I will never get addicted to anything. problem is that, even if you like that, it can still happen to you. And so shortly after I had my daughter, I was getting a lot of migraine headaches. And actually, when I was pregnant with her, I was getting terrible migraine headaches. And they continued on after she was born. I couldn't take anything while I was pregnant, but after I had her, the doctor gave me some tablets to take. Now, this is where I think as human beings, we need to ask our doctors some questions, because my doctor never told me that these tablets had tranquilizers in them. I had no idea. I thought they were just painkillers. I still take responsibility, though. I could have checked up and I didn't. And my doctor didn't tell me that these tablets also had codeine in them. They were an opiate-based painkiller. And I think all of us understand that opiate-based anything is highly addictive and very dangerous. And initially, take what I needed and they'd make me very tired and I'd feel very woozy, and there was such an impact when you took them that you knew you had taken them. But after a while, your body gets used to it. And so to cut a long story short, you end up taking more and more and more. And over a number of years, it comes to the point where I was taking them every single day. And the average person takes 1 or 2 of these tablets and it will knock you out. By the time I sort of came to the end of myself, the minimum I was taking every single day was about 8 tablets. I want to tell you, if I took 8 tablets today, I don't know if I'd survive. They are very strong. And so I was really addicted to these pills. But you know what, the doctors, and they don't always tell you these things, they don't tell you that codeine aggravates depression. They don't tell you there's a tranquilizer in this tablet and you can't take it long term all the time every day. They just keep prescribing, give you a repeat script. You find yourself in a situation where you're getting the tablets from multiple places because you haven't got enough to last you. And, all of this going on at a time in my life, this is probably about 10 years ago now, where I'm in the ministry. I'm ministering to people, and, I always had this one rule. I'm a bit of a control freak, but I had this one rule was I will never minister if I've taken the tablets, and I'll never do anything like that. I've taken the tablets. I used to always save it until nighttime. So a bit of a controlled drug addict, but one nonetheless. Doesn't make any difference if you're on cocaine or LSD or weed or prescription opiates or anything other prescription. It's all the same thing at the end of the day. And, I remember going to my neurologist and about the migraines, and he said to me, what you have to do first, he said, you have to get off those painkillers. So the person who gave me the painkillers wasn't a neurologist. He said, you've got to get off them. And I remember getting into my car after I'd seen him, because he said, they're just going to keep giving you more headaches. And I got into my car and I sat there and I cried. And I said to the Lord, I said, these little blue tablets are like my friends. They're always there for me. And it sounds so pathetic if you think about it afterwards. But, I said, this is all I've got. And it sounds so terrible in retrospect, but that's what I said. They're like my friends. When I need them, they're always there. When no one else is there for me, these tablets are there for me. And I made a deal with the Lord, and I said to him, if I have 3 days without one headache, I'll stop taking them. Now, I think it's almost like I was trying to con God in a way, because I knew I hadn't had one day without a headache for years. So I just left it there, and I was very upset and very tearful, and I didn't say anything to my husband, because he would have said, oh, you better get off them. And a year and a half went by, and suddenly, out of the blue, and I'm still taking these things every single day, after a year and a half, suddenly I had no headache for 3 days. And I remembered the promise that I made to the Lord, because you know what? You can love the Lord in the middle of your mess. You can be in the middle of the worst thing and you still love God. You're still depressed. You might still be addicted, but you know that you love God, and you're crying out for that help. I don't know why it took a year and a half. I just know it did. And as those 3 days happened and I was pain-free, I said to the Lord, I'm jumping in with everything I have and I'm not going to stop. It was very, very hard. I get emotional because it was hard. I'm telling you, having 3 days without a headache didn't mean I didn't want those things. And the withdrawal symptoms were pretty horrible, not only physically but emotionally. And I remember starting to go through anxiety. And at this point, I still didn't know these things had tranquilizers in them. But I began to have terrible anxiety because I was going off these tablets. I had withdrawal symptoms where I felt like I wanted to pull the skin off of my body because it's hard to explain if you haven't been there, but you feel like you just want to tear the skin or the flesh off your body because it's so agitated, and it just feels really horrible. And so it was hard. It was a really hard thing. But I want to tell you something, as hard as it was worth it. And the one thing I also did do is I went and I researched, and I started taking certain amino acids that really helped me a lot, because on my own it was very, very difficult. So I did that. And the other thing that I did, this is all practical stuff. I'm going to do a future video as well on depression from a spiritual point of view, but I want to tell you, I did not feel spiritual at all. And at that point in my life, I was like, all I can do is what I can sort of physically do. And I began to take control of my life. Number one, I stopped taking those tablets. The second thing I did, and I can't remember what prompted me to do it, I began to change the way I eat. Because I saw things about sugar, and I'd read articles, and I've been looking and researching about migraines and depression and all this kind of thing. Did a lot of research because I liked doing that. And I began to see how some people that have migraines and depression, that eat a lot, if you eat carbs, it aggravates it. Now, this is not for everyone. Some people are fine on carbs. My husband can eat carbs and he's 100%, he actually thrives on them. I don't. And what I found for me personally, and if this is for you, it's for you. If it's not, that's fine. If I eat carbs, if I eat a lot of bread and pasta and such, which I love, it makes the depression worse. It gives me all kinds of other physical symptoms. I'm just not a happy girl when I do it. And so I stopped taking tablets, I stopped eating carbs, and I want to tell you, it wasn't an overnight thing. It took about 3 months, and I'm still struggling with this depression. And I remember my husband walking into the room one day, and I don't know, we had been arguing about something, as married couples do sometimes. And I remember looking at him, and I just shouted at him. I said, I just want to die. I was so I screamed at him, I just want to die. And I felt so bad for saying it, but he looked at me like this horror and shock. I'm like, my husband's a pastor, we work together in the ministry, and I'm screaming at him that I want to die. It's the most unspiritual thing to be doing. It's like being in a place that is so shameful. And he just looked at me, and he just didn't know what to do with me. And, you're in that low place. But after about 3 months, it was like a miraculous thing. I'd just taken control of what I could take control of physically, because I didn't feel I could be spiritual. I'd taken control of the tablets, the eating, and exercising. Exercising was huge for me. I remember coming home one day and saying to Llewellyn, if I wasn't walking every single day, I said I'd be taking those pills. I just knew it, because get that agitation. I want that tablet. I'm getting this emotional need for it, because you get emotionally dependent on it as well. And I'd go for that walk and really walk it out. And I just said to him, I know if I wasn't walking, I'd be taking those pills. So stopping the pills, eating differently, and exercising, I'm telling you, might not sound spiritual, but it makes a huge difference. After 3 months, it was like suddenly I opened my eyes one day and I felt like I'd just come alive. It was like my eyes opened, my brain opened. And I don't know if it works like that for everyone, but I found with me, with anything I do health-wise, it normally takes about 3 months to kick in. And it was like suddenly I felt like a different person. I felt like I had this joy inside of me. And I began to realize, sometimes depression is spiritual, sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's emotional, and sometimes it's all three. And I believe I had an issue in all three areas, and I'm genuinely going to talk about the more spiritual side of it really soon. But when I took control of those three things, as I began to feel like I was actually coming out of this coma, really, then I was able to begin to do the spiritual things, because I didn't have the strength for it before. And you know what? If you struggle with depression, this is not me telling you what to do, but it's me telling you there is hope. It's me saying that no matter where you are, no matter how dark it is, no matter what's going on right now, there is hope. And everybody's depression is different, Mine was definitely related to my lifestyle and the tablets I was taking, but I had the depression before that. All that stuff just made it a lot worse. But there is hope, and there's hope in Jesus. And you know what? Sometimes you can feel bad. The only difference between me now and then, sometimes the devil still comes knocking on my door. You wake up and you feel that pit, like you're in a pit. And then but I know what to do now. I know how to get up and fight for my own mental health. And that's the difference between now and then. I know that when I feel like that, I need to get up. I need to shower. I need to get dressed. I need to brush my teeth and start getting into the word and all that sort of stuff. And it's the hardest thing to do when you're in that place, but it's the thing that you should do. If all you can do is get up and wash your face and get dressed, do it. If that's all you can do, do it. You can do a bit better as time goes on. But I want to tell you, there is hope, and there is help, and there is healing emotionally. All that depression is rooted in all kinds of things that we sometimes don't want to acknowledge. And I really feel that, you know, we need to explore those areas. But I will talk about more of that stuff in the future. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this. And again, if you want to hear more about this and some of the other things that I'm going to be speaking about in the future, just subscribe and you will hear about it. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.